Farm for Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm for Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm for Profit Podcast.
Hey listeners, welcome back to the Farm for Profit Podcast. You got Tanner and Corey hanging out today. Look at that, it didn't even give you a chance to say your name.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello,
it's
everyone.
Corey.
Dave's doing business.
We are a little bit ahead of schedule, but one of the cool things about today's episode is, Corey, have you been watching the Olympics?
Haven't seen an ounce.
Not at all.
I haven't had the TV on since it started. I've been running all over the place.
Smokes.
You been good?
I mean, I'm not necessarily a good judgment of is it good or is it not good. To me, it's more, it's fun to see athletes at the top of their game, and it's fun for me to watch the weird stuff like water polo and fencing.
So you really like the opening ceremonies is what
Nope,
you're saying?
Nope, that's not one of the things that I enjoy tuning into. But I've also got a daughter that's interested in gymnastics, so she likes watching the gymnasts, and it's a lot of fun. But these top athletes got there not by themselves.
Right?
Usually a support group, a coach, a team, somebody that pushed them beyond their limits, and it's exciting to see that.
It is cool what sports can do for someone, even if they don't make it to the Olympic level.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone still, if you were in a sport, whether you're in third grade or in high school or in college, you always had a coach.
That's right. We want to hear from you guys. If you've had a really great coach in your life, remember you can reach out to us, farmforprofitllc@gmail.com. All of our social media, YouTube, leave comments there. We really appreciate that, especially your reviews. Those go a long ways for us. We thank you for doing that. But we felt inspired. One, we had a really cool connection that we're going to share with you, and the inspiration and timing of the Olympics was something that we felt was really great, because if a top-performing athlete have coaches, and we've talked about the fact that I've got a coach that kind of helps keep me pointed the right direction for Farm for Profit, to keep you and Dave wrangled in. Mm-hmm. But if you think of other business executives, they've all got advisory teams and coaches. So if we're trying to push for excellent results as listeners of Farm for Profit, don't you think they should have access to coaches too?
100%.
So that's what we're going to dive into today. I want to introduce to you Kristjan Hebert. He's president and visionary. And then Evan Shout, he's the CFO of Herbert Grain Ventures. And to that introduction, it doesn't sound like these are the coaches that we were talking about. But just wait until you learn more about what they've got going on. Welcome to the podcast, boys.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Where are you guys coming from today?
Evan, I'm the farm itself is based in Moosomin, Saskatchewan. To put it in American terms, I'm basically 2 hours directly north of Minot, North Dakota.
We appreciate that.
And the consulting and coaching is about 4 hours to the east of that in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
So why so far apart?
Personal reasons. When I joined the group, I've got a couple kids with autism, and honestly, the center in Saskatoon is probably the best place for them. So it just so happened that we were kind of going into COVID in those times, and Zoom was real good, and we found that I didn't need to be on the farm, so we set the main base kind of Central Sask.
Got it. So
go ahead.
I
think too, we'd add in there that when you're looking for coaching and consulting type skill sets, a city atmosphere is a little easier to recruit, and I'll let you know, we did just put a 5,000 foot strip in Moosomin, Saskatchewan, but it's a little easier to fly in from the rest of the world into Saskatoon than it is to Moosomin if you want face-to-face type work.
You personally put a 5,000 foot airstrip in?
No, the town. I wish I could. I'd be proud of it, actually.
Yeah.
But we were fairly large supporters of it and used kind of our network to help do a bunch of the fundraising. But, airstrips aren't... they're not as prevalent in Canada as they are. We did some insurance work in the U.S., and I found them a lot more prevalent. I mean, part of it is in Saskatchewan, we got 8 feet of frost in the winter, so the dirt work costs a little more money than, say, the southern states. Mm-hmm. And our tax regime isn't real friendly on infrastructure, but it's no different than the U.S. And that once you can kind of get an airport, it's unbelievable, the economic spin-off and the healthcare benefits that you can see from it.
Yeah, that's interesting. We still need to get up and podcast in Canada.
Yeah, we've never done it.
We haven't gotten up there yet. We need someone to invite us.
I'm glad to know that you guys have
foot the bill.
a strip, though, because we got a buddy that has a plane now.
I wonder if he could do that.
Yeah, we didn't ask him about international flying, but, man, that's pretty nice when you can do that.
It is. So let's first dive into the farm side of it, just to give our listeners a little bit of background. Kristjan, you're sitting there on the farm. Why don't you take that question and let us know what that looks like?
Yes, I mean, in today's picture, the 2024 crop, we grow mainly malt barley, canola, hard red spring wheat, a little bit of yellow peas and hybrid fall rye, depending on what the markets are. Reason we're not into corn and beans is we don't get quite as many heat units as say Minot, North Dakota, or south of that. Malt barley is probably our biggest money crop, and then canola is obviously fairly important in the Canadian rotation. We planted kind of a sandwich away, one side or the other, from 40,000 acres this year. But I mean, we're a typical kind of high growth family farm. I mean, we were 1,500 acres. We had cow calf and a feedlot when I was growing up. I left for university in 2000, kind of started renting land in 98, rented more land through university. Kind of when I moved home in 04, still wasn't 100% sure I wanted to farm. We were farming, I think, like 3,500, 4,000 acres between mom and dad and my wife and I in 08. So I did my CPA, chartered accountant. I call myself a recovering accountant now, but it was actually learning the numbers side of farming that kind of made me fall in love with it. I mean, I liked farming, but at the time we weren't that good with people. It kept my dad away from getting to all the hockey games he wanted to, or coaching as much as he wanted to. And so that part bothered me. But as I saw the numbers and more learned about business, to be honest, that's kind of what got me interested, or really interested. So I came home full time in 08, and we'd have put in kind of around 45 to 5,500 acres in 2008. And obviously, the rest is history. The farms went from, call it 5,500 to 40,000. We launched Mavrick Ag that does all our consulting for progressive farms, some multinational work and some government work. And then in all that, we were doing some public speaking on farm management. To be honest, that's a whole nother tangent on its own. It's a pure fluke. One mentor of mine was Danny Kleinfelter at a TPAP, and he fell and hurt himself when he was supposed to come speak in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Phoned me a couple days before and said, "Hey, you're going to go do this for me." And we realized that was actually really good on the HR side. But as we were doing speaking, we kept getting all these requests for coaching. And so the farmer coach idea came out of, we were doing consulting in Mavrick, and people were asking for it. So we'd like to say we had great ideas, but we really just listened.
I feel like that's the same way Farm for Profit grew.
From 1,800 acres to 40,000 acres.
From 1,800 listeners to 40,000 listeners. I was just going to give you a hard time about what happened when you came back to the farm. Did you go from 1,500 acres to 40,000?
No.
Well, you might need a coach.
I'm just going to sit here and soak this in while you guys go at it.
I like it. Okay, so Evan, you joined the coaching side. Were you a part of Mavrick Ag before you took on the coaching?
Yeah, so I'm also a CPA by trade and recovering accountant. So Kristjan and I obviously knew each other from a long time ago, went to university together, wrote our CPAs together. And I kind of took the CPA route and did public accounting up until he offered me a job in 2019. And the rest is kind of history on that side. And I rolled over as CFO of the grain farm to start. And then, like you said, we started doing a whole bunch of public speaking and getting requests from other progressive farms that wanted kind of to know the growth trajectory and how we were doing it. And even as much as how Kristjan could get me to leave a public accounting firm to come and work on a farm, right? Like that's almost unheard of territory up here of that specialty almost moving across to the family farm side. So it led into Mavrick Ag, which was pick up, 5 or 6 big progressive farms, do the internal CFO side, just like I was doing for Kristjan and Herbert Grain Ventures. And honestly, it was almost data sharing back and forth of this is what these farms were doing and this is what we were doing and how to improve kind of as a group rather than just one or the other. And then, like you said, we both started speaking across North America, the US, and then Eastern Canada. And it turned into people just asking more and more questions. And on the consulting side, obviously, there's some pretty hard economies of scale. You can't take on everybody. Where when we launched the coaching side, it was almost, it was opening it up to a whole bunch more people to come and, sit down and just hear what we were doing more than anything. And it was just the stories, the transparency of here's kind of the operations of the farm and the farms we were working with on the consulting side. Here's what they're doing. And here's how they're being successful. And here's, even more so, here's some of the mistakes they're making so that you don't have to make those same mistakes.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's what we can share with our listeners today is kind of some perspective off the top. And then secondly, just maybe some more insight as to what coaching even means. So accountants to farmers, which is fascinating because banking to podcast hosts is one transition. Accounting to farmer to coach.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that.
What I got out of there was he said a CFO in the farm, and that's what I wanted. I've talked about this last year that I wanted to do on my farm. I haven't done it. I think that's the secret.
Yeah, your CFO's dragging his feet.
Yeah.
No, I think there's probably a lot to be learned from the two of you. So when you think, Kristjan, back to when you got into the numbers side of farming, how did you approach it as a business and no longer the family farm? If you're looking to boost your harvest efficiency this season, look no further than Brandt. All of their grain cart options are designed with you in mind, from unmatched durability to innovative features that make unloading easier and faster. Not to mention their unique large footprint track configuration that reduces field compaction and increases flotation throughout your field. They're the hardest working, most efficient units in the industry. Brandt grain carts are here to be built to keep you running smoothly. Visit Brandt.ca today to learn more information and see why farmers across North America trust Brandt. That's Brandt.ca for more information. Strong, reliable, built to last.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty blessed that my dad was pretty focused on numbers. I mean, he didn't have an accounting background, but I would say he always kind of had a propensity for an innovative use of cash. I can remember 2 or 3 times when I was young where he'd sell his whole cow herd because he thought cows were overpriced and go buy land because he thought land was underpriced. So, I mean, he was pretty big on numbers and gut feel already. The easiest way, I guess, I could explain my love of numbers is I kind of got 2 stories. I mean, the first one would be, and I mean, not to plug John Deere too much, but in 2012, they released that video, Farming Forward, where the farmer sets his coffee cup on his desk and, his holographic screen pops up and shows him what's going on in the field. And I kind of, Evan knew me back then, I joked, I want to be able to run my farm from wherever I am. If my kid's playing hockey in Boston or Florida or Europe, or my daughter's riding horses, I want to be able to help run the farm from there. I don't want to be tied down to where my grandpa's donkey died because it ran out of water. And then, the second piece was, I think as farmers, I mean, we're all gamblers. I mean, we throw a bunch of seeds in the ground and hope it rains and rely on soil. But I take that to another level is that I love blackjack. Now, what's the difference between blackjack and farming? Every hand you get in blackjack, the odds. So really, that was my goal is I just want to turn every decision on the farm into a blackjack hand. If the dealer has a 6 and I have 2 8s, here's the odds. I can make that decision, or I can guide my team members. Here's how I would make that decision, and here's the only 3 hands you need to phone me about. So that the more things on the farm that we can collect the data on and turn into odds-based decisions, I think most farmers out there would say, if the odds are better than 80%, go. If they're between 60 and 80%, we need to talk. If it's under 50%, probably don't do it. But it doesn't matter if I'm there as the farm, as the CEO or not. I need to empower my team to make decisions, and the only way I can do that is if I give them odds or kind of create ditches. And yes, I guess kind of farming for blackjack was the goal. And I wish I could give you a whole bunch of processes and I had it all thought out, but I didn't. It was just like, I had that little cheat card for blackjack hanging above my computer, and it was like, what are the hands I'm trying to figure out in farming?
That's why I'm not very good at blackjack.
You don't know the odds.
I must not be very good at farming. I don't know.
So then, Evan, how do you approach a new client and get them to adopt the same mindset that this is no longer a family farm? We need to approach this like a business.
To tell you the truth, off the start, it was probably more difficult than it is in today's environment. I mean, 3, 4, 5 years ago, convincing, the farmers that they were entrepreneurs was kind of step one of, you're running a business, whether you realize it or not, you're a multi-million-dollar business owner. And as such, we need to start having those processes and people and everything else in place. And then obviously the industry where it's gone the last few years, I mean, the dollars are bigger, the equipment's more expensive, the land is harder to get. It almost forced the hand of the producers to go that way. So, I mean, yes, there's still a ton of farms that are the lifestyle farm, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that what we found was the progressive guys that wanted to grow and wanted to make that next step, they needed to start focusing on business more than just growing grain. And that's where we kind of came in, was we were just giving them a bit of a roadmap to their own success of, have you set long-term goals? Do you even know where the farm's going in the future? Because lots of guys, they're just year to year. And then once you figure that out of, what are the steps for your own success? It's not that everybody wanted to be like us or like our farm or like the farms I work with. They just wanted to be as good as they could be on their own operation. And we're using the same processes and same coaching and same entrepreneurial thought and mindset that we were using. It's just at a different scale. And some guys in the coaching are, that 20, 30,000 acres, and they're pushing the same as we are. And some guys are that 2,000 acres looking for diversified operations. It doesn't really matter what you're looking for. It's still the same recipe. It's still the mindset, the goals, the HR practices, the processes. It doesn't change based on scale.
I think if I could pop in, a good friend of ours had in his email, and I don't know where he got the quote from, but a family farm run like a business is a great way of life. A family farm run like a way of life is a pretty bad business. And that doesn't matter what size you are, right? It's, do you have a goal to be better? And everybody's definition of better is, some guys want to be bigger, some guys want to be richer, some guys want to spend more time at their daughter's soccer practice. What is your definition of better? And are you going to chase that, right? And that kind of falls into the bucket.
That's a good one. What does your client base look like? You said North America, so like, is it mostly Canada though? Or do you get down in the States? You all over the place?
So on the speaking and coaching side, we do have a few U.S. participants that come up into Canada for the actual coaching practices 3 times a year. Speaking wise, Kristjan and I are both down in the U.S. doing the same tours. On the consulting side, it's mostly Western Canada, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. And more of that is just, it gives us the ability, same crops, same planning steps, all that stuff on the consulting side. Where the coaching, it's not specified to a certain farm. I've got farms that have cattle. I got farms that got supply manage. It's not just strictly grain operations. It's built for the actual mindset of an entrepreneur. It's not just built for the actual farm. So it's open up. I mean, the U.S. participants, honestly, the hardest learning block is just making sure that we have the accrual financial information to get the start. Because obviously down there, it's not as prevalent as it is up here. But other than a few of those stumbling blocks, it's still the same processes, just put into practice on the farms.
Do you know the difference between accrual and cash accounting?
No.
Why don't you share that, Evan, for the rest of our listeners? Maybe Corey will pick it up too.
I'm sure I heard it in college.
So let's put it this way. Cash accounting is you check the bank account every month to make sure there's a balance in there, and you make your decisions based off that.
Mm-hmm.
Accrual accounting is more based on profitability, what you're actually earning, over a longer term span. So it's being able to break it down into profit, equity, those numbers that are a little more meaningful from a CPA standpoint of me analyzing, ratios in the farm and key performance indicators, where the cash side, you're just strictly making decisions based on, do I have money in the bank?
Yeah, so the best way I can describe it is you take the first expense for the 2024 corn crop, starts that accrual period. And that goes all the way through the end of the last bushel of that corn crop that you sold. So that may span 3 years for some people. But that's how you're determining the profitability.
We're definitely using that. I just didn't know what it was called, right? Yeah. Like, I can't go, I got $100,000 in the bank account and go buy, $50,000, two $50,000 semi-trailers, knowing that I have rent due, next month. I can't do that unless I want to really dip into my bank account or my operating loan.
Absolutely. The other thing I was going to ask you guys is, you mentioned you're mostly small grains on your farm, Kristjan. What's a small grain farmer know anything about coaching someone who raises corn and soybeans?
Well, to be honest, if you wanted Kristjan's personal opinion, not even just farmer coaches, business is business. I don't care if you're growing widgets, manufacturing a car, or growing corn and beans, or raising canola and wheat. I mean, figure out your cost of production, be really good with people, and and make sure there's more money at the end of the year than there was at the start. And you can run a successful business, right? So I would say we're coaching mindsets and processes and culture, and you figure out how to implement that in your own business. And I mean, and there's some method to our madness. I mean, one was my blackjack theory, but I went down and took TPAP out of Texas A&M there years ago. I think it was 08, 09. Got to know Danny Kleinfelter really well, kind of that high level agriculture theory. And then I ended up looking for coaching personally, and there was none in agriculture really. So I go to a group called Strategic Coach based out of Toronto. They do a bunch of work in Chicago, and it's entrepreneurs from all over in the world. And like some of my best friends in that group, I mean, one's a builder in Chicago, another guy owns a bunch of resorts in Mexico, other guy has a copper mine in the UAE. And guess what? We have all the same problems. If you're going to grow fast, your problems are based on risk management, cash flow, and people. It doesn't matter what business you're in, right? And so I think we wanted to take those concepts of, it's more about your mindset and switching your focus in that growing's okay. In fact, I mean, inflation's a minimum kind of a 3% per year. So if you're not growing in some fashion, you're going backwards. So you're going to have this mindset that I need to grow. Doesn't have to be in acres, can be in value add, can be in net worth. Just have that mindset. And am I going to focus on people and processes in order to get there so that I don't burn myself out as the leader? And that's kind of where the coaching philosophy came. And then obviously you can go into the numbers of small grains versus corn and beans. But the simple way to do that is you just use percentages, right? So corn and beans, you figure out your gross profit, you take seed, fert, and chem off that, leaves you with gross margin. You do that as a percentage of revenue. You do that as a percentage of land price. And you can do the same thing on small grains. And I mean, those percentages should show us that we should farm in one spot in the world, but magically every spot seems to win on a different year. But it really is all just math.
So you've mentioned a couple of different things during that. Evan, I want you to expand upon the comment he said about being really good with people. When you're going and coaching these farmers and business owners, what does that mean to you, and how do you get some of these guys to be good with people?
So it's probably the one area that agriculture has lagged behind every other industry, and I mean, I'm pretty much speaking the truth here. It's not a surprise. HR is not a strength on most family farms, and to tell you the truth, most family farms would tell me that they don't have HR. But I would argue that working with your brother or your dad or your mom, that's the number one HR issue on most farms. So whether it's the succession, whether it's, any of those discussions, roles, responsibilities, I mean, HR is kind of a forbidden fruit for most farmers. So having those discussions is getting their mindset around the fact that, as Kristjan mentioned, it's what is success to you? Is success missing every ball game of your kid, or is success not being there for your wife, or those guys who want to work 3,500 hours a year, 4,000? Is success really built on how many hours you're working, or is it built on being able to build a team and having the farm run itself? And I mean, that's where the self-managing concept comes from in a lot of our strategic coaches. It's how do these guys get around the concept of cost, because most guys don't hire because of cost, and start looking at humans as an investment. Because I mean, that's where I would say we've excelled more on the farm side than any other operation I know. Kristjan, when he came back from TPAP, and then obviously when he hired me and our COO, it was just built on putting the right people in the right spots. And he didn't know where it was going to turn out. But what it's done for us is it's made the farm self-managing. So if Kristjan decided that tomorrow he wasn't coming back to the farm still runs. And that's usually a tale that most farms can't tell me of, what happens if the key man in the whole operation isn't around tomorrow? Well, that operation doesn't function. So it's getting the mindset around being able to rely on the people and your teams and even family members, so that everybody has their own roles, their own tasks, and they know what those are and they're accountable for them. Because accountability is a really big thing in business, but in agriculture, we've always overlooked it, right? And I mean, that's where, when we tie it back into succession issues in agriculture, that's one of the biggest things, is that dad and son, or dad and daughter, or whoever it might be, they're fighting over the same roles and the same tasks. And when you do that, it makes it really hard for succession to actually occur in the right spots. Where Kristjan bringing me on for CFO, well, that took the financial side away from him. And then he brought our COO on to run the operations and the HR side. Well, now that's freed him up from that. So each of us has our own roles, our own tasks, our own accountability. And that's the mindset we're trying to get across to guys of you don't have to do everything, because farmers are used to being the CEO, the janitor, the operator, everything all in the same day. And no other business is run like that.
It hits home really close. I mean, the amount of times I heard growing up when I was coming back to the farm and all that, and I wanted to expand, and Dad and Grandpa really didn't have that mindset. And they said, why would we want to do that? Then we'd have to hire someone, And I don't know, maybe it's easier to justify when you're doing so many different crops. I couldn't even write them all down, because there's always something going on, right? Whereas we here are mainly corn and soybeans, maybe a farm here in central Iowa or in Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, whatever, would have hogs, maybe some cattle, but usually not a lot. So we have pretty big seasons, right? We got a spring season, and we got a spraying season that just kind of lasts if you have a sprayer. Some people don't, so just hire it done, and then you got a harvest. I mean, we are actually out in the field, 3 or 4 months a year out of 12?
We're the exact same.
Really?
The majority of farms in Canada are 2 crop, either wheat canola or durum and lentils.
Okay.
So it's really similar. But I mean, take my farm, I got 2,000 semi loads of grain that got to go to the elevator, so I can either hire that out or I can do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is one big thing for most operators, is to make the transition that I want full-time people and I want full-time rock stars. And I don't like, in a perfect world, I wouldn't have part-timers unless they're kind of permanent part-time. They come back for the growing season every year. Where a lot of operators I find are like, I just want to find a really good guy for 30 days and then I don't have to deal with them for the rest of the year. Right? That's going to make more work for me. Yeah. And I mean, it sounds a little bit preaching to the choir, but I mean, Evan could go back through all our stats. I mean, when I first had this dream, I had lots of days in planting that I worked more than 24 hours before I could get back, because we were trying to run 24 hours and I was working 3,500 hours a year and 18, 19 hour a day averages. And fast forward 10 years, we expanded 72 quarters this winter. I ran the planter for 500 acres. I usually sit in one 20 hours a day, and I worked 14.1 hours a day, the lowest I've ever worked in a planting in my life. And I'd like to tell you I knew what I was doing, but the only thing I knew what I was doing was just hire really good people and get the hell out of their way. Because the worst thing you do is hire a really good person and then micromanage the hell out of them every day, right? I mean, that would be the definition of most succession plans, right? Father, son, father, daughter. You probably have one of the best people you can coming back, and then let's tell them what to do every 15 seconds and see if they enjoy their life. Right. And so it's hard to say, just believe me, but I don't know how to do it other than lots of friends have done it with other businesses. And I had that goal. Don't get me wrong. There's days I still feel guilty and wondered if I done it right, but I had the goal. If something happens to me, I don't want this place to have to get sold. I want it to be able to run itself. If my kids don't want to take it over, I want it to run itself. And I want to be able to coach my kids in sports. But, if we were to have my wife and my father on here, they would probably tell you, when we were 5,000 or 6,000 acres and I said, hey, let's get bigger and hire a bunch of people so I can coach more sports and we can have more life. And they didn't look at me like I was a goddamn unicorn talking to them. I would be lying. They did. And I mean, and Evan was in a bunch of those conversations. And now you would have both of them on and they would tell you, we're busy I'm as busy and my dad is as busy and my wife's as busy, as they've ever been. But we have more control over our calendar than we've ever had. So I got big positions on the market. So guess what? I'm not taking every day off. I'm paying attention. But I can get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, put my stops in. And if I want to go boating with my kids this afternoon, I can do that. And I couldn't do that when I moved home. And so it's, like Evan said, it's that mindset of wanting to get there. Now, everybody's path to get there is going to be a lot different, though.
Well, and the big thing for us was keeping the data on all this. So when I came in the operation, we were still in that 14,000 range, I think, Kristjan, when I joined. So we hadn't hit that next, let's call it the gas pedal. So we were able to set up processes to keep the data and track it. So when he says, our time per guy has dropped as we grew, I have the data to back it up. And I have the data from a whole bunch of other farms to back it up. So when guys say, well, I don't want to grow because it adds more hours, more work, it doesn't. And I literally can prove it with the farms we work with. If you can do your HR correctly and trust people and bring on them as an ROI rather than a cost, every farm I've worked with that has run down this journey, it's lowered their hours per day. It's given them a life back. They're not the center focus. Like Kristjan said, just get out of the way, because we all know those team members that are really strong and probably could do it without you, but you're always there. So it is him just saying, believe me, but at the same time, we've got the data and the information to back up everything that we're saying.
So as a coach, I imagine training is a pretty big deal. You bring someone on, you hire rock stars, but they might not know how to run a planter or sprayer, but they might be rock stars in some other thing. How do you go about the training process?
So it's a little bit of two steps. So I would say, there's the training aspect, which is having your level that has been there long enough, knows what they're doing, being able to pass that knowledge down. And I mean, on most family farms, that's dad, right? Dad or mom has to be able to pass that knowledge down and be willing to do it. The other one is process. I mean, if Kristjan had to train every single person we put on a drill the exact same way, we'd have 25 guys that he's got to go through in order to get them all trained. So by having the processes in place, I mean, anything from taking a video of how to set a GPS. Because if I go down there, I haven't run a tractor in a couple of years because I'm obviously not sitting on the farm every day. If I could go down there, I could literally just open a video and be able to set the tractor without ever being in it before. Well, that's lowered our training. The other one is actually having the investment side of training in your head. So most of our guys, whatever they want to take, we're pretty open to actually sending them. So I mean, on the consulting side, most of the girls and guys that work in our consulting group, they come to me with what training courses they think are going to be best for them to grow, and we'll fund it because there's a return. And I always trust that there's a return coming back. And on the farm, that might be something as simple as we sent a few of our guys to management training. Why? Because HR is really hard to learn. And if they're going to step up to that next level and start running crews, they need to know how to manage people. So it's that side of it. You have to have a little bit of the belief side, but you also have to have the processes in place and know that HR is a very significant part of your business once you start this journey.
Terraplex Ag is your one-stop shop for agricultural drones. Visit www.terraplexag.com to explore their range of drones, support equipment, and technology that provides you the accuracy and efficiency you need. Their experts have training and support services to help you use your equipment safely and effectively. Or you could have them custom apply your chemicals themselves. Unlock the agility that you need to accelerate profitability on your farm with Terraplex Ag, delivering cutting-edge solutions for yield maximizing results. Visit www.terraplexag.com.
Well, and I think, too, you go back to the start where you guys talked about the Olympics. I mean, it's funny because I always talk that we run our businesses like sports teams. And, I mean, we were big hockey players, but I don't care if it's football or hockey or baseball. I mean, they're team sports. The only difference between the captains and non-captains is the captains are better communicators, i.e. better trainers and better spokespeople. And that's how you have to operate. And so when it comes to training, like Evan said, we got something as simple as if you're in the cab, all the hydraulics are labeled, snap a picture of a Q code, takes you to the YouTube video that shows you how to put in a prescription. Because that's something you only do 14 days of the year, and then you don't do it again for another, 300 and some days. Hard to remember. But when it comes to training on how to run a sprayer or run a drill or run the combine or how to load a semi correctly to weight, that's where you got to get your team captains in place. So, we've got a field captain, we got a shop captain, and then we have project captains, and that would be who would train the people underneath them. So in most cases, I mean, we're up to 4 seeders or planters now. So we'd have an overall field captain for the 12-hour shift, and each one of those planters would have a captain because we're doing 12-hour shifts. So there's how the question: if you're the newest operator, you're going to ride with your unit captain for X hours before you're allowed to drive by yourself. If you have any questions, these are the leads on for that shift, and it can work its way up the chain. And I think I got called out once in the whole season this year where they needed me, that the captains couldn't deal with it. But it all goes back to how Evan said at the start, building the process so you're comfortable with it, and then making people accountable, right? And a mentor of mine once told me, as a leader, really your job is to create the destination. So where are we going? And we're on a highway, And then my second job is to dig really deep ditches so nobody crosses them. And my third job is get the goddamn rocks out of the way. So show your team where they're going. Give them the ditches to say, don't cross these without asking. If you do cross them, you might be fired. And then get all the problems out of the way, and those are the rocks. And other than that, everybody actually has an urge to drive somewhere really fast that they think is cool. Now, once again, my mentor made it sound simple, and it took me a decade to even get kind of less awful at it. But it is doable if you want to keep working at it.
You know, there's some parallels here. We're Iowa State Cyclone fans. Our listeners know that quite well. And what you're saying is a lot of what Coach Matt Campbell's been saying since he's come. And it's basically been about a decade. But he said from the beginning that he's going to build a culture, and he just asked the fan base to trust the process. And it's a mindset that he wants all of it. I mean, all these words that you just got done using, he's putting together. And, of course, we're all amped up for college football season to start. Mainly because Iowa doesn't have a pro team, but we're amped up and excited because we know that you've seen the progress year after year after year. And I'm sure, Evan, that's what you got to do when you're working with your clients and coaching them, is to remind them it's not going to get fixed in a day.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we're finding. I mean, on the farm side, we obviously set our long-term goals. And the funny part is the team's bought in enough now that when we set goals, they tell us we're sandbagging. And they want more. They're hungrier than we are for growth, which is an awesome feeling, but at the same time, it scares you a little bit. But on the coaching side, it's exactly like you said, is they need to be able to see what they've done. And the problem is that as entrepreneurs and as progressive, strong-minded individuals, we never actually look back to see how far we've come. So we set really big goals, really far out, and then we just go for them. And every year, whether we succeed or fail, we're always looking forward, and what we don't realize is every year we probably move the goalpost just a little further because we are moving ahead, but it just seems like we're never getting to the destination. It's really hard to stop, look back, and just see how far you've come. And that's the part that's missed by a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of farmers. Look back, see where you started, because that's, you've probably come a very long way. It's just without ever looking back, you're always shooting for the stars, and you never actually know or celebrate your successes, right?
Man, I want to ask so many questions on growth, but that would be a rabbit hole. I think that's a whole nother show.
Well, I think we could go a little bit into it, because one of the questions that we get from a lot of our listeners is they don't know when the right time is to upgrade a piece of equipment. And how do they know that this is the time that I can take that piece of equipment and use it to my advantage to grow, to get and help, like you said, propel your operation forward? We've talked about this a lot on when do you purchase a sprayer? When does it make sense to purchase a sprayer? We've had those conversations. But when you've looked at scaling your operation, how do you gauge machine efficiency?
Yeah. So Evan can give you way more detail. I run a little more off gut feel. As I said, I just need blackjack odds. But I mean, our biggest thing would be what is the number of acres that you guys kind of determine as a unit? And everywhere is a little bit different, right? So if I was to explain Southeast Saskatchewan, 8,000 acres is a unit, right? That's an 80-foot drill. That's a high clearance sprayer, and that's 2 combines. It's tweaked a little bit now with the X9s, but let's say 8,000 to 9,000 is probably the number. So if you're at 6,000 acres, you probably should try pretty hard to get to 8, because you're probably using the equipment for 8,000 at 6,000. If you're at 12,000, I'm going to tell you right now, it's awkward. You're either working way too hard or you got way too much equipment. And really it is, like I said, I hate to say math, but I mean, we're trying to hit 8,000 acre units. We try to have 1 full-time person for every 2,500 acres. I pay out between 1 and 1.05 hours for every acre I farm. So I know I'm going to pay out 40,000 hours. My average full-time employee works 2,300. So if I got 15 full-timers, I'm short 8,000 hours. There's how many part-time people I need. And it's all just economic units. So when we went from 8 to 16,000, that was what I would call kind of the first painful step. That's where we went to 2 air drills running 24 hours. And like I said, it'll be different in every area, but every area will have their own economic unit. Once we got the 8 to 16,000 out of the way, to be honest, then it literally was just, we just have to do that again. And I mean, I hate to say it now, but I mean, if I could we've never really went looking for expansion. We've always said our doors open and people came to us first, and we'd have more of a merger and acquisition strategy where we'll help with taxes if you want to work part-time, if you want to keep your equipment for 2 or 3 years, we'll have you do some custom work, like a bunch of different options. And I mean, if I was to put the sign up to say perfectly, it'd be like, hey, we'd really like to expand 8,000 acres every time. Because then I know, I'm at 32,000, I'm going to 40. That means I need another drill, another sprayer, and 2 more combines. And it would just make the math easy. It's when you're in between those stages that the math becomes a little bit hard. I'll let Evan go into more of the details, but I mean, we got a simple equipment calculator that kind of calculates your cost per hour, which then you can take back per acre on everything we trade. I don't know, we probably got 200 or 300 or 400 pieces in this thing now, where I can tell you that a 600 horse John Deere tractor, this is what you should be paying per hour of use, and this is what you should be paying on a sprayer. And then it's up to you to keep the nozzle on time high on that sprayer to keep that cost per acre down. And we have that on kind of every piece of equipment, not only on our farm, but a bunch of consulting farms.
Because that's the big thing, guys. And I mean, not to go back to it again, but the data side of it is, it's my passion, but it's also led to that blackjack card. So not just the multiples, but I go into the machines at year end and we pull, how many acres per day were we doing? What's the fuel efficiencies of the machines? It all affects the data, which then tells us what that multiple needs to be. So most guys will tell me a multiple and I'll laugh, because I know that's not the true multiple. That's what they've determined is good for their farm, and that's fine. But if you really want to nail the numbers down and hit growth and be able to afford the expansions with the price of equipment today, you have to go in and actually determine what efficiencies can we actually find and what can we do. So I mean, something as simple as timing sprayer fills. I've had guys who they were spending 20 minutes filling their sprayer, and all it took was a little bit of 3-inch piping and their guy running it to use a stopwatch to time them, and all of a sudden they're filling in 7 minutes. Well, that probably cuts an entire sprayer out of your operation. So you literally just saved $1 million to $1.5 million on a piece of equipment, and all you did was change a process. So those are the efficiencies we look for, especially on the equipment side, because as equipment gets more expensive, those efficiencies have to be brought out. And I mean, to go back, Kristjan's 24-hour seeding window, lots of guys will tell us they can't, and there is areas that can't. But at the same time, there's a lot of farms that if they went 24 hours would literally cut their equipment bills in half. And by doing that, yes, you're going to have to add a couple humans, or there's going to be some other, processes you have to put in place. But the math is there and the math works. So it's those decisions, the data side, the multiples, the efficiencies. It's not as simple as just saying, yes, I need a combine, or, the repairs are too high, I should trade this. There's actually a lot of math and a lot of, analysis behind every decision we make.
Well, and I think let's just call a spade a shovel. The hardest part of every equipment decision is look in the mirror and do I think I need a bigger planter, a bigger sprayer, a bigger combine, because I'm simply avoiding hiring a human, right? Because there's a lot of farmers that just don't like people. Yeah. They like growing crops and they like machinery. And so if they can go from a 40-foot planter to a 60-foot planter and not have to hire anybody, that's what they're going to do. And a bigger tractor. Well, if you spend $1 million on the bigger tractor and the bigger planter, current interest rates are 6 to 7%. Even if you paid cash for that thing's costing you $70,000 a year. That's a full-time person that you could have just run the other planter for an extra 2.5 hours a day and accomplished the exact same goal. But you would have had to work on your weakness, which tends to be people.
Mm-hmm. So we'll go back to what Evan said, and I said I was going to tell Kiowa to just clip that, throw a John Deere Ops logo over it, and boom, that's a John Deere Ops ad. Like, why?
I did. You realize I'm sitting in a case chair here, right?
I do see that. Yeah, we're going to have to figure out how to
blur that out, Kiowa.
I've done a few podcasts with, I think it's Kyle Plattner at John Deere Ops and Nick Horub about kind of the same stuff, right? You're right. I mean, we use my John Deere every single day. Like, every day, every employee. It's one of our top 3 apps that everyone has to have on their phone, right? And then, I mean, I remember doing a project with Deere on, it would have been the 4940 before they went to the 1,600-gallon tank. And, of course, we had cut ours off. We had taken ours off and cut it and put it to a 1,600-gallon already so they could compare ours to every other 4940 in North America. I'd like to say Deere and our dealership knew, but I'll keep that to myself. But they were able to pull the data off our sprayer against every 4940 in North America in the black soil zone. And I mean, nozzle on times range from like 29% to 80%. So there's the easiest way to get your cost down. And then secondly, that extra 400 gallons allowed your nozzle on time to be way longer because you weren't filling as often, right? It's sometimes it's those little simple things like having somebody on your mix rig so your sprayer can run more. And it feels stupid because you're paying somebody to run a water truck. But the really expensive thing is your sprayer sitting there idling while you fill it yourself. Like, it's really expensive. We just don't think about it that way. We think the human's expensive.
So you should shut your sprayer off when you're filling up. What
That's
about
a whole
agitation?
nother story.
Yeah, you're trying to skate the whole
Well,
point
okay,
of the conversation.
this hits home again because I was trying to sell our Hagee, and I pulled all the hours off of it, and we got 4,100 hours on it. It's only got 900 some spray hours, which you would call 900 nozzle on time.
Yep.
Now, I will say that sprayer, the first 7-8 years, ran a cutter bar for detasseling, so wouldn't have been nozzle
quite,
on
right.
particularly.
You're at 25% nozzle on time, but ultimately it was used for.
But someone asked me, like, why is that so low? And I'm like, well, you've got a lot of road time, a lot of idling while we also filled with a 2-inch system forever. And then you go to the 3-inch and 2 inductors and all that, and you're like, holy crap, I can fill in 4 or 5 minutes.
So if you think about the unit, he said a really good point here, economic units. If you're thinking corn and soybeans, what do you think the economic unit is for corn and soybeans?
So I wanted to ask, what's your average field size?
You're not gonna like this answer, guys.
I'm not here to like it.
My favorite fields are 2,000 acres because that's what I can seed in a day. But like, I got a 5,500 acre field without a road in it. That's my biggest one.
Oh my!
Now it does have potholes though. We got to go around.
Oh,
I would say our average is in that 600 to 800 range.
Okay.
What do you think our average is around here?
120?
That's average? I think that's big.
You think that's big?
I think we've cutting stuff up so much. When you get to 120 or 160, you're like, oh, finally, I get a field I can run in a little bit.
I mean, the way we're set up is we've got our big fields and our not so big fields. So every other year, all our corn acres are in big fields. So which is, really handy. But it's also really handy when all your soybeans are in 6 big fields.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, I think average on our farm is 120 acres.
I'd feel like we're closer to between 80 and 100 on our farm. I mean, we have a 190, 170, 160, and then the rest is 80s, some long 80s, short 80s, a 60, a 40.
So when you think
30.
about it, what do you think ideal for one combine would be? Corn and soybeans, Central Iowa, your operation. Do you think it's 3,000 acres?
I think 3,000 acres is and it depends. If you have a lot of smaller fields, I think 2,000 acres, and you can have a smaller combine, right? You don't have to have the big one in the 12-row head or a 16-row head or something like that.
Yeah.
You can have you can get a lot done with a Class 7 or Class 6 with an 8-row head.
Right. Do you have the data on that, Evan, from the folks that you've coached?
I won't have it for corn and soybeans. I promise you that, guys.
But that makes a lot of sense because I look at the operations around here that and it does seem like when farms crest that 3,000 acres, the second combine shows up. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we get combines that show up earlier than that on some farms just to do soybeans.
Yeah, a little bit of that. Mm-hmm.
I think too, the other thing you guys got to bring into effect is bushels, right? So I mean, I'm just guessing, but what, beans are probably running 60 plus and corn's running 250 plus. I'm just guessing, but I mean,
we're not in Illinois. 250 is that's a good year.
Okay,
I would say
200.
Yeah, 200 to 225 is, when you're in the Midwest. If you get to Kansas, you might be happy with 150.
Yeah, but I mean that's another thing as you're figuring out economic units. That's another thing to think about, right? So if I was to use my average yield across the whole farm, it's probably 60 bushels. Canola's a little less. Barley's closer to 100. Wheat 70. So bushels and revenue is two other things to look at as you come up with economic units. But I mean, your story on field sizes, hits pretty close to home. If you were to ask my wife, does Kristjan want any more land? She'd tell you, well, his answer is if it touches anything he farms, and he'll probably overpay for it. Because I think the number one thing, if you want to look at efficiency, is good fields, i.e. when it comes to their size and the drainage and how much you're turning, and then size. And sometimes we get too focused on growth and just randomly picking stuff up all over hell and high water. And like you said, then road time and fold time and all that becomes more important, where we could have paid a little more or a little more rent for that thing that just took 2 fields together.
Is the competition very, very bad up there? I mean, people really trying to grab ground everywhere, or is it fairly easy to come by?
It all depends. I mean, you could probably have, out of 100 farms, you could have 85 of them on your podcast from Canada, and they'd say it's almost impossible to pick up land. And then you'd have 15 to say, we're not actively trying. We grow every 1 to 3 years, but they're not actively trying, but they've created that culture. Everybody in the area knows they're interested in more ground. They're not trying to steal it. But the thing we're finding in Canada is a lot of the farms that are coming up for rent or for purchase, they're 2,500, 1,500 to 6,500 acres. And a lot of these farmers that are ending their career, they don't want to deal with 7 guys or 8 guys. They want to deal with 1. And so a lot of it is to do with who in the area could I deal with? Is it 1 or 2 or 3 farms that I just can go there and deal with everything, right? They might be able to buy some of my equipment. They can rent or buy it all. And I don't have to have the headache of 15 different deals and lawyers and accountants and et cetera.
Yeah, and I mean, part of it was a decade ago, you could pick up a quarter of land here, a quarter of land there, and you could grow slowly. And what's happened now is that there was consolidation. We just never really noticed it until you started getting some of the big farms. But now the consolidation is that the average farm is no longer 600 acres, it's 3,000 acres. So when they go to sell, there's a limited buyership that can afford to take on 3,000 acres at, whatever value you want to hit it at, right? So it's just become harder for some of the smaller ones that didn't grow in the past to make that jump now, where some of the larger farms that have made the jump in the past are set up more to take on these the larger farm sales.
Because I think our listeners would want me to ask that question is, how do you become that 15%? How do you become those 15 operations that are in a position to be able to say yes to an opportunity or have an opportunity come to you?
Yeah, I think, and I, once again, in university and college, I read all these books and went to TPAP and thought of all these cliche things, do what you love and you'll never have to work a day. And if you find your passion and do a good job of it, the money will follow. And I rolled my eyes and said, that's bullshit, to be honest. And now here I am, I'm going to give you guys a bunch of cliches, right? But, step number 1, you run 2 businesses. You run a farm operation and you run a real estate business. And understand the numbers on both those. And it's no different than, Walmart sells stuff and they have a building. If you have a hotel, you need it to be full. So is your farm operation profitable? And is your real estate operation profitable? Yes, they're at different rates. And then how much cash flow does your farm operation have? And how much equity does your real estate operation have? And you need to know both those numbers, because your real estate equity allows you to buy land. Your cash flow from your farm allows you to pay for it. And you can't be going into your banker saying, hey, God, I'd like to buy this 80-acre, tract, but I don't know if I can afford it. No, if you know those 2 numbers, you go into your banker and say, hey, I am buying this. Here's my equity that I can put down. Here's my cash flow to make the payment. Will you give me the money? Can we work together? Do I need to go to check out a couple other banks, right? So step 1. Step 2 is have that culture that not only you, but everybody that works for you, if somebody stopped them and said, hey, are you guys looking for more land? We're always looking for more land, right? Like that's the truth. I've had lots of guys on my team where a neighbor is more comfortable to talk to them than me, and they'll stop them and say, do you think Kristjan would take on more land? Absolutely he would. We're always looking for more land, right? You got to have that culture. And then to be honest, it's the little things, right? So part of our public speaking is so that more people know who we are. Our crew that works for us, most of the full-time people end up getting, it's part of the package. After X years, they get a white half ton with our logos on the side. And at the rink, they'll get questions, or at the football field, like, you guys get a truck and you got to have decals in it? Oh yeah, it's just part of work and it's awesome. Like, we want our decals to be seen at the rink. This one sounds really dumb, but I own a Greyhound bus that has decals all over it, and everybody that works for us only gets charged fuel to take their kids to any activity. So if the school wants to do a ski trip, if you want to take your kid and his team to a football game, if you want to take them to a birthday party at the pool, all I'm going to charge you is fuel. All my guys have their A1 license, and girls basically, so they can drive it. Nobody can rent it unless you work for me. And you would not believe how many questions we get about owning a bus, how many people talk to our team about owning a bus, and how many comments we'll get on social media that, the school hasn't been able to do many ski trips in the last 3 years until they started getting a really good deal from a local business. And so if your kid's been to a ski trip, make sure you try and thank them. Right. And I remember talking to buddies down in the US, things as simple as on those smaller fields, like who mows their ditches and treats it like it's their own land versus who doesn't mow the ditch. Right. Like, no, but I mean, people forget those little things, right? The yards that we take over and the farmer moves to town, we got a yard crew, and it's a pain in the ass. And our office and our ops fight over who should do it. But same thing, we get a comment, God, that yard is like somebody's still living there. And somebody that wants to rent you their farm, that matters. They want to know that if they move to the city and they come to check out the farm where they grew up, it's not a gong show with kosher over their head and the garage is full of rats, right? They want to see that they don't care if you move some trees and get rid of some bins. They just want to know that you care. Is the grass mowed? Did you spray the weeds in the gravel? Are you still using the yard at all? It's sometimes it's just that mindset of trying to think the way that the people you're about to deal with think, not just think about yourself.
Well, and I think the one piece that you missed a little bit was that we offer the ability to come up with some pretty unique ways of actually funding it or coming around on it. So the fact that we're both CPAs, there's tax planning. I mean, a lot of older farms that are selling, they don't want to have to deal with the accountants, the lawyers, all that stuff. Well, that's something that we can take on. So it's more or less, we give them the ability to have different tax plans. And like Kristjan said, different equipment. If you want to keep your equipment for a year, just because you don't want to pay the tax on it, we're pretty open to working with landlords and working with, potential purchasers for that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's where being part of that top 15% comes in. Is it not only is the public relations, the HR, the culture, it's also being able to hit the easy button, because everybody, when you're selling those final quarters, you don't want to have to go through all the rigmarole of everything and the tax filings and all that. You want to just have the easy button. And that's what we found is one of the biggest benefits we can give is just providing that easy button.
And I got 3 things from all that back there. First, that's a new Canadian word for me.
Decal?
Decal. That's a new Canadian. That'd be a decal here
I know.
down here.
We've heard of many semis getting loaded, but
not
not
a
once
decal.
covered with decals.
That's a nice decal.
Uh-huh.
Nice decal.
You should
It's a
put
big
it on
one.
a hoodie. You'd look better.
Yeah.
Oh, we got the hoodies.
Yeah,
That works.
hoodie.
Or a bunny hug.
Or a toque.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. The other one is, you said the farm is 2 businesses. It's your real estate and it's the farm. And I would say a lot of the successful farms down here are that way, right? What am I trying to say? I don't want to step on any people's toes.
Not emotionally
They
attached.
might have fell into it.
Oh, I see.
From
By geography.
From where their grandpa put their farm, because now they're on the edge of a large metropolis that's getting $40,000, $50,000 up to $100,000 per acre instead of $10,000, $15,000 an acre, and they go buy.
But those farms could also die too. They could sell and be done.
They could.
Yep.
But then my other comment to that was, we have had a lot of off-farm incomes, or multiple businesses. Maybe it's not real estate. Maybe they sell seed, or do something else. But a lot of times we're supplementing the farm just to make sure that the farm stays afloat instead of running them as 2 separate things.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of really great information in this episode, and I can't wait now because Corey's going to be sending me not only airplanes but also Greyhound buses off of Facebook Marketplace, so we can put our decals on it.
We can wrap it.
We could wrap it.
Slap
That's
the
one of my
decal right
favorite
on
lines, right? Is time. If you want to think about it in life, time is actually your most precious asset.
Yes.
For every human on earth. And I've only actually figured 2 ways to buy time. First one's people, and second one's planes. So I'm in love with them both.
Yes. We have been saying that probably for a solid year of time is, everything costs money. That's fine. You can always go get more money. You can't go get more time.
Mm-hmm. No. So I'm already planning for a part 2 episode because I think Corey's right. If you guys enjoyed your time with us, I think we'd enjoy to have you back a second time and focus solely on scaling. What that looks like, how far, because we get that most commonly, right? our most popular episodes are going to be one like this, and it's usually ones focused on beginning farmers. How did someone get started? So it'd be kind of nice to be able to pair this up with a beginning farmer followed by a week of, all right, let's scale this and make a successful operation out of it. But before we wrap up, Corey's going to have more questions, but the last one I want to ask you before our payoff is, our listeners are going to walk away with a lot out of today's episode. But what's one more thing that you want them to know, each of you, before we close this out?
Evan, you go first.
I knew you were throwing me under the bus on this. I think the biggest part, and I mean, we've said it a few times, but it's the mindset that actually matters. So you asked a little while ago what the difference of that 15% is. And the difference is the mindset. It's not that you grew up rich. It's not that you got left a whole bunch of land. I can divvy out the real estate and I still identify who the top farmers are. And the top farmers are the ones that have the mindset of being prepared, having things in place, running it like a business, running the HR. I mean, everything we talked about today, it all comes back to one thing, and it's your thought process. And we get a lot of pushback on stuff we say, lots, guys, because obviously we're pretty passionate about how we talk about and the things that we believe in. But we've also seen it done. And the biggest change that most of the guys that have accomplished it is just they changed their mindset from, we have to be there all the time, we have to work the hours, to, you know what, a team of really smart people might actually do it better than me. So I just need to get out of the way, and that gives me freedom of my calendar. So that's probably where my head is just, it's just a mindset shift, and it's not going to happen overnight. Like we said, it's a decade worth or 2 decades, and just, it's slow progress.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go to the mindset thing too. And I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world. I mean, whether you want to talk about politics in Venezuela or in the US or in Canada, or you want to talk about the Olympic opening ceremonies, we can all talk about crazy stuff going on, right? But I think what we do need to remember is we do live in a world where the future is better than the past, specifically in North America. And there's a lot of volatility, but that's just the way life's been. And I mean, and Warren Buffett talks about it all the time. And I read a quote, I think it was Peter Diamandis, that once said that best explained how I would say I look at the world when I get up every morning. And what he said was, your job as an entrepreneurial parent is 1, to leave a better world for your kids, and 2, leave better kids for the world. And it kind of drives everything I do every day. And that my definition of that is, I don't want kids at 30 years old to say my dad never made it to any of my stuff because he was too busy building the farm. Doesn't matter if the farm's awesome when they're 30. If I missed every provincial ball game and every hockey final and every, horse riding practice, I didn't do my job that I said I was going to get up and do. But at the same time, if I don't make any money and I can't buy the hockey stick and I can't get them to the provincial ball game because I can't buy a hotel room, I didn't do my job either. And so it's trying to find that balance to leave a better world, but also at the same time leave better kids. And everybody's going to have a different way to do that. But I think it's pretty important for everybody, like what gets you up in the morning? What makes you excited? And if you know why you're getting up and you know why you're excited, I think most days of your life can be pretty damn fun. And if you're having fun, I mean, nobody woke us up to go to football or hockey practice on a Saturday at 6:30 a.m. when we were 10 years old. We did it because we loved it. And I think life as an adult can be the same thing. If you know why you're getting up and you know what makes you have fun.
Good answers.
He answered the payoff question already.
Yeah, absolutely. I will keep my extra answers short, knowing that there's a 2-parter coming because I've got a lot. But I do want to give you guys the chance. You guys obviously go around and speak. You guys obviously do some coaching. If I wanted to get in touch with you guys on either one of those, what's the best route and what does that process look like?
So for the consulting side, obviously mavrickag.com is the website, and that's probably the best way to get in touch. And not only that, but to see what actually is involved in all, when we say consulting, obviously that's a pretty vague word. So there's a lot more detail in some of the explanations. And then obviously Farmer Coach, which is the venture we've had for the last 2-3 years, which is the coaching side. That's our biggest push, and that would be farmercoach.ca. And 3 times a year, you come, you sit for a day and a half with some of the most progressive and strongest entrepreneurs that we can bring into the course. And honestly, it's just continuous year after year. You just work on yourself, work on your business, and then get better.
Yeah, I think I would just add in kind of our overall group of companies is the Hebert Group, HEBERT group.com. And that drives you to everything we're involved in. Evan mentioned 2 of the big ones, Mavrick Ag and Farmer Coach. The farm operation itself is Herbert Grain Ventures. And they're, it's not necessarily us, but kind of all the groups are relatively active on one form of social media or not. If you're looking like something to follow. And I think, we always urge to people to send questions, and whether we're on a podcast with you or we're doing our own podcast or we're writing a blog, we really try to tackle questions. I mean, most of my favorite speaking engagements now are fireside chats where I have no plan ahead of time. I'm just flying in blind to wherever I'm going, whether that be, New York or Illinois or the middle of Canada, to answer questions. We don't like to be prepared. If we don't know the answer, we're going to tell you. And if we have an idea where to guide you, we're going to guide you. And if otherwise, there's no answer to have.
That's kind of how I take on the podcast.
That's fair.
I had no idea I was talking to you guys when I pulled in here. Taylor just sent me a calendar invite.
It's intentional. It gets genuine questions out. And every once in a while, I get to bring you back on track.
Yeah. Yep.
You got any more before we wrap up?
No. I mean, I got a lot, but no.
No, that's good. Gentlemen, this has been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to kind of hit some high points here before we wrap up for our listeners today. We got to talk to Kristjan and Evan. We learned a lot about the various operations that they have, but we focused a lot on the coaching side of things today and how we discovered mindset's one of the key things that we as individuals can do to change to help propel our businesses forward. We've shared for a long time, Dave, our third co-host, has said for years and years that data is the currency, and then he finishes that sentence with the internet, your farm, your business, and you guys reiterated that for us as well. Being able to understand your numbers, but then being able to apply those numbers to goals that you set, and then that's what you can build your culture around. Because if your staff, your number of employees, whether they're family members or non-family members, can see that that's the vision, we have a lot more success going forward. Being really good with people is hard, but that's the difference maker, I think we heard you say several times, between the great operations and the good ones, is HR becomes a strength of theirs. They look at humans as an investment and not a cost. They're hiring rock stars and then getting out of their way. We're looking at identifying units if we're going to scale our business to be able to successfully do that and do it with confidence in ourselves. But ultimately, when you're looking at scaling, if you can identify your captains, your top individuals, to rely on them to take the weight off of your shoulder so you can do more with time because it's one of your most precious assets. We said there closer to the end, one of the things you can do to be that 15% is to separate your businesses. Run them profitably as a standalone, whether it's real estate and farm, side seed business and farm, podcast and farm, whatever it is, make sure each unit can run on their own. And ultimately, figure out what gets you up in the morning, because what you do with that motivation is probably going to be ultimately what helps drives your farm forward. Did I cover it?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, shout out your podcast for our listeners before we let you go, and then we'll send you off.
It's The Truth About Ag.
Awesome.
And you can do it on YouTube and any of the streaming platforms.
That's perfect. Well, again, we appreciate you joining us. We appreciate you listeners for sticking around too. Fire questions over. Just like we said at the beginning of this show, we know there's going to be a part 2. We don't know what day yet, but we'll bank those questions up so that way we can have an interactive show with these guys. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, guys, thanks again.